Hi, it's you with the Italian Sports Guys. Bada boom!
Bada bing!
And you're here with the Brian Scheck State Farm Italian Sports Guys season recap show this time, Kyle. And of course,
unfortunately,
yeah, for the third consecutive year, very disappointing last play loss for the Saints in the playoffs. And I guess what was most disappointing here, Kyle, was that the team that we saw on Sunday was not the same team we saw during the regular season, especially the last 6 or 7 weeks of the year.
Yeah, you look at it from year to year, and what can you learn from your mistakes, or what can you learn in situations where you didn't reach your final goal? And last year, our final goal was the Super Bowl, and we realized that we kind of limped into the playoffs a little bit. We weren't at full steam, even when we played the Eagles in the divisional round with the bye week.
Right.
And then we subsequently, albeit for reasons beyond our control, lost to the Rams last year, and that was that. This year it was a little different. We were coming in averaging 40 points a game over the last 4 games. We were clicking on all cylinders. We were getting a couple of players back week by week from an injury standpoint, and went out there and subsequently laid an egg.
Yeah, I'll look at a few different statistics that I went through to tell you where we were different in this game versus where we were in the regular season. Clock management, we'll get into it. This was not Sean Payton's best day. I think he usually is pretty good at that. I didn't like the calls he made in this game. Stopping the run, we were 4th overall, in the league coming into this game, and they got Dalvin Cook had 80-some yards in the first half against us, and really set the tone for this game.
Sure,
we had to make some adjustments later. Lack of turnovers in the turnover differential. I mean, only 8 all season, 2 in this game, and we lost. We lost
the NFL record for the regular season.
That's right.
It was only 8. We turned it over twice in one game,
and we were number 2 in the league in turnover differential with a plus 15. We were -1 in this game.
Right.
We get to miss Will Lutz field goal. He's fantastic. He's a Pro Bowler, but he missed a big one here.
Well within his range. Usually makes it.
That's right. It wasn't a long one. Protection of Breeze. I mean, our tackles had 0 sacks all year long. Our 2 offensive tackles. We gave up 3 in this game. Third down defense. The Saints were 8th in the league coming in, 36.4%. They gave up 10 of 18 to this team. Those quick outs to Thielen on 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8 were there all day long. And that leads us to Lattimore. He's a great corner. He's always on the best receiver on the other team, but he did not have his finest day. I talked about the 3rd down conversions. Also, he got lost in space once on that deep ball.
That was brutal.
Yeah.
But it wasn't the only bad play he had all day.
Yeah.
And you don't want to make it personal, but Adam Thielen really turned him around more than once.
Yeah.
And it made him look subpar.
Yeah.
Let's start. Well, how well do we start? I mean, so many things. I'll say, first of all, overall, we got outplayed.
Yeah, for sure.
To your point with the offensive line, and really both, we got our tails whipped at the line of scrimmage.
Right,
They were a tougher team. The Vikings out-physicaled the Saints. It was plain as day, and that was not something that you saw this year at all, save of all things the Atlanta game.
Yeah, right.
So I thought that was really bad. It's specifically our interior offensive line. Yeah. Whenever it was 3rd and even passing situation, 3rd and 5 or more, they pinched down, brought their defensive ends, Daniil Hunter and Everson Griffin, brought them in over the head up or outside shoulder of the guard, and they physically whipped up on Andrus Peat, number 1. Yeah. Eric McCoy did not have a good day. Larry Warford. You got a lot of money and a lot of investment tied up in those guys. And I really, really am disappointed, specifically what I saw from Andrus Peat. Never been known to be the toughest guy around and really got taken to the woodshed by these guys. Now, you want to you want to tip your hat to Mike Zimmer and his Vikings defensive staff for coming up with that scheme, but not so much. Because it happened a few weeks back against the Falcons, and you don't think that somebody's going to... You got to have a plan for that.
Yeah, well, here's the thing, too. I know the Vikings have said we looked at that as a blueprint on how to beat this team, but you still got to win the matchups. I mean, look, we beat... Well, how many teams since that Atlanta game we've won ball games? 5 or 6 teams we've beaten that all could have looked at that same tape, but we beat them physically. They didn't beat us like the Vikings beat us in this game. So, again, you got to win your matchups even if you got the right scheme.
Yeah, there's something to be said for that, but we had no answer for it. Right. Tight splits down, whatever. So that to me was very disappointing. I thought again, line of scrimmage thing. I thought we were out coached. There was we were not. On defense you want to set the edge. Yeah. Okay. On outside run plays, our ends were sucked in. Yeah. They were getting to the point faster than we were repeatedly. Yeah. Okay. And you people, so it got a little quiet in the dome. I said because we know what we're looking at. Yeah. And you could tell from after the first couple of series, we knew that there was a problem. That hey, we're going to do our part. You got to do yours.
That's right. Yeah.
And I don't think the Saints at one point in time, from a line of scrimmage standpoint, ever felt comfortable and had control. The defense overall played well. I don't want to sit here and
they hung in there and they kept us in the game. Yeah,
like you mentioned before, 80-something yards for Dalvin Cook in the first half. Yeah, that's going to open up a lot of other things. And again, Marshawn Lattimore got lost in space a couple of times. He never does that.
Yeah, right.
You know, what a time to not play remotely well for them, for a lot of them.
And I talked about the clock management. I'll just give you a couple of points here. Number one, the 3rd and 7 or so, the Saints have the ball, 2:30, 2:40 left in the first half. You know, they had a chance to run it down to the 2-minute warning. And when you third and 7 on your own 28-yard line,
right.
I'm not hurrying up because the odds of converting that are not real good. And if you stop the clock, you know, you're giving them more time. So Saints hurried up and tried that deep ball. And, of course, it turned out to be a disaster. It was a bad mistake by Drew.
Yeah.
They got a good run back because you know what happens. You throw the ball low and the receiver doesn't touch him. It's a big run back the other way. But to me, if I would have walked to the line of scrimmage, try to draw them off sides and run it down to the 2-minute warning. That way, if you don't convert that, you got less than 2 minutes left. So there's a lot of little things we could have done. Also, when they get the ball and score the touchdown with Dalvin Cook, when they had the ball inside the 10, we could have called a couple timeouts, kept some time on the clock.
Right.
And, of course, we get the run back and we have to settle for a field goal. May have been able to take a shot there.
Yeah, and they had timeouts.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like the clock was going to run out.
Right.
You know, but we didn't use ours. So I don't know what we were trying to prove there. Trying to achieve there, it was just disappointing in many facets. And look, I you know, Rod with Peyton, Rod with Drew, Cam Jordan, Rod with this whole team. You know how we are. We're passionate about it. But at the same time, the knock on Sean sometimes is that he gets cute. And I thought we got a little cute. I thought we got away from trying to run the ball when we didn't have success with it early. Yeah. And they were they were stuffing it early.
Right.
But it got better as the game went on, and we still didn't do it a lot.
Yeah.
And to dig into some of it, you know, on that last drive, in regulation, we run with Taysom Hill as the Wildcat back, whatever you want to call it, and the numbers work in your favor. That's why that works. Everybody said, well, they know he's getting it,
right.
But you have an extra blocker.
That's right.
So we run that play to the left. He goes for about 12 and then about 25 or 30, maybe more. Yeah. And then we come back the next play with Drew back, fine. Empty backfield.
Right,
Explain that to me.
That's right, yeah.
You know, I understand what the sheet says. I understand what but at some point you have to say, okay, they're having real trouble with this. Keep them on their heels. Yeah. We didn't do it. Then the foolish play by Kamara to not get back set, and we lost 10 seconds there.
Yeah, a lot of things went wrong there, of course. You mentioned, well, you know, again, it's clock management on the final drive. You know, again, I would one more time. It was 3rd and 17, I think, or whatever the Vikings had. That play ends. There's still 2:40 left on the clock.
Right.
Sean lets it run all the way down to the 2-minute warning before, or 2:06 before the punt. So you don't get that 2-minute warning timeout because it's change of possession, right?
Right.
If you call a timeout with 2:35 left, you get the ball back 2:30 left. You got 2-3 plays from the 30-yard line before you hit the 2-minute warning.
Right.
So he seems so intent on having that one timeout left. I get it. You want to have that one timeout late, but I don't think you really sacrifice 40, 45 seconds for that one timeout because you can stop the clock by getting out of bounds or spiking it or whatever. And I thought they just gave up too much to try to hang on to that timeout.
I thought every trick that we had for our half end and game end, and we're usually pretty good there. As you mentioned, we're usually very good there.
Yeah.
Backfired.
Yeah.
They just never. It wasn't working, and I thought he could have gone the other way with both of them.
Yeah.
And been a lot more productive and saved some time. But look, it goes down to what happened on the field, and they punched us around a little bit. We did not respond well. And again, I think that, and there's some issues we'll get to. Go down your list here, but I thought most importantly, that's what happened. We got out physical.
Yeah, and I don't know, if you try to put an explanation to this, Kyle, I don't know how you come up with, and I don't know how you guard against it if you're Sean Payton. If you see one thing during the regular season, the way your team's playing, and you don't see it in the postseason, but here are a couple of hypotheses, and you can, riff on these. Minnesota got the rest in Week 17 because they locked in their spot after they lost to Green Bay. We did not. We kept playing for that seed, so they looked a little fresher the first 2.5 quarters of the ball game for sure. Is it just one of those days? Is it just one of those games like the Atlanta game where we just didn't have our best for whatever reason, something you can't explain? Number 3, maybe this team is so sharp and efficient and well coached that those little talent gaps we have in certain spots don't show up because we're so good and so efficient and so well coached. Maybe when you get to the postseason where the talent is better, maybe those deficiencies show up in spots. Maybe this team's starting to press. Maybe it's starting to become the narrative in our head. I mean, the Saints have set a record. They've lost six consecutive playoff exits by one score or left. That's an NFL record. Maybe that's becoming a narrative that's getting...
Last 3 ended on the last play.
That's right. Maybe they're pressing a little bit. So who knows? I'm not real sure.
I don't know, Craig. I'm not a big believer in. I mean, I'm a superstitious guy with some of the things, but that's wearing your lucky shirt.
Yeah.
Right. I'm not at all into maybe we're pressing. I don't think that players at this level that have achieved what they've achieved, with the leaders on this team, a guy like Drew, who they ride as he rides, I don't think he presses in these situations. I think he needs time to do what he has to do, especially as he gets up in age, and we didn't afford him any time back there. I'm not going to blame him. Didn't have his best day, but I'm not going to point the finger at him. There's people in his face the whole damn day.
People were too quick to, it's amazing how people change their narrative based on one game. I mean, he was 15 touchdowns and 0 interceptions in the month of December. And, again, the people in his face all day, you're right, I don't put it on Drew. Something I want to point out, too, we talked about the comparisons between Tom Brady and Drew Brees. What was the narrative a year ago in December for these two teams and these two quarterbacks?
Oh, that Drew was getting old and that Tom was rocking and rolling.
That's right. Tom could go till he's 45.
And Drew maybe had 1 year left.
Right, had 1 year left. His arm was getting tired. Now the narrative's completely reversed, and that's really because of the weapons they have around him and how well the guys around him are playing. Tom really doesn't have the weapons this year. So, to start throwing Drew under the bus based on what we saw on Sunday, again, you forget it. It's a team game. He did not have time to throw and survey the field. We know if he's got time to go through his progression, he's going to find some places.
Yeah, if you give him the time, he's proven time and time again in big games. This is a Super Bowl MVP. He completed whatever in a row, 20-something passes in a row in the Super Bowl, for crying out loud. I do want to go over a couple of those things that you mentioned. Yeah. It's a great hypothesis, like you said, a great theory that, the Vikings got the rest. And, last year the shoe was on the other foot. Yeah. And we were the rested team, and we didn't come out sharp at all against Philadelphia. Like you mentioned in last week's broadcast. Right. We got out of there with the skin of our teeth. Alshon Jeffrey catches that ball. Who knows where that goes? I still think we pull it out and we win that game. But there's no rhyme or reason for it. But something goes on in these playoff games, and maybe it is, Craig. I don't know. Maybe there's a vibe in the city where we're clinching and we're puckering.
Well, the only thing that makes me feel, maybe a little bit better about that is we've won games in those same years, right? Because we beat Philadelphia last year. So, it's not like you have to go back 10 years since we've won a playoff game. I mean, we won a game to get to the Rams. So we know we have playoff success in our past,
Yeah, 2 years, and we won a game to get to the Vikings the year before that.
That's right.
Look, I think it goes down to a few things. I think one of the things that bothered me a lot, and you got to be careful how I say this, I guess, but I think, our bell cow offensive player outside of Drew and Mike Thomas is Alvin Kamara, and something's going on there. And I'm far be it for me to say what's going on in his head when I'm in that locker room, but there were times when he absolutely balled out the first 2 years of his career that he did not show up in that same manner this year a lot of times. There's a lot of speculation. He just switched agents to Rich Paul. For those of you who don't know, Rich Paul's the guy that represented Anthony Davis, for crying out loud. So that tells me a lot about who's getting in his head. That's just my opinion, not yours.
Yeah, there's a lot of different things you could point to there. Number one, he had some injuries this year. Now, they say he's healthy, but did those injuries get in your head at some point in time? Number two, don't underestimate the influence that Mark Ingram had when he was here on this young man. They kind of looked at each other kind of like brothers and as a team. And I don't know.
And a mentor.
Without that mentor, he doesn't have that dynamic anymore. So it's hard to say. Maybe it has to do with injuries, worried about your future contract years and so on. One thing.
I want to say something real quick. That's something that I didn't put into the equation is the effect that Mark Ingram had on this entire team.
Right, yeah. Right.
This entire offense from a toughness
the physicality.
standpoint.
We talked about that going into the season. Would we have that same dynamic here? And again, you can talk about whether Latavius Murray had it. He played well at times. Did we use him enough? Did we utilize him the right way? Did we find the right mix between these two guys?
Right. Talent-wise, Latavius Murray actually maybe hit a tiny eyelash better than Ingram, certainly is equal. Right. But Ingram brought an attitude and a toughness that you're now seeing in Baltimore that I think is something you can point at as one of the possibilities of what we missed, and maybe what Alvin Kamara missed, because he wasn't the same.
Right, yeah. And I thought it was a good point made today by Sean Fazanda in their Fox podcast. He mentioned, one thing that really tells you that they don't, maybe have the trust in his health is, he's become very much a check down and screen pass guy this last year. You look at the last couple of years, they run the full route tree with him. He goes in the slot against Minnesota in the playoff game 2 years ago. They throw the fade route deep into the end zone and put a go-ahead score. You look at that play against Malcolm Jenkins in the playoffs last year in Philadelphia, the fly route down the sideline. So you didn't see those kind of routes being run this year by Kamara.
Yeah, and that may, again, either go back to the injury or the fact that they had to buy some time for Latavius Murray to get up to speed with our offense. It is complex.
Yeah, right.
So maybe that was part of it. But there are a lot of question marks. There are a lot of free agents. There are a lot of positions that need help on this team.
Yeah, no question about it. Well, any more thoughts on this game, Pat? We'll come back. We'll talk about the Saints 2020, looking ahead, some personnel issues, things they need to address. We'll talk about. We'll kind of revisit our predictions from last year for the NFL as well, and also we'll look at next week's games. But any more thoughts on this particular game?
Yeah, flipping to the defensive side of the ball. The Marcus Williams experiment for me is over.
Yeah.
This is a good guy. He's a nice guy. So am I.
Right. Yeah.
When you're playing free safety, you're the center field. Forget about it.
I'm a good guy. Yeah.
I'm a good. I got skills. People like me. Man, who doesn't like me, man? You have to be smart enough to realize that when Marshawn Lattimore goes off the field and Patrick Robin comes in cold off the bench, that you have to shade over a little bit. In the NFL, there's a biblical law that when
they go after the guy,
when a new guy comes in, rookie or 10-year vet or whatever he is, or anywhere in between, when a new guy comes off the bench, they're going to throw at him. It is overtime. Not only does he not shade over to help, he doesn't get there fast enough on a ball. There's no other deep route on that play if you watch it. Right. I don't know what he's doing. I don't know what he's thinking. I think physically he's very gifted. They love his size. He grades out well in the games. Apparently, Pro Football Focus had him with a really high grade, not only in most games, but his overall seasonal grade. His instincts suck.
Yeah.
Okay? He misses tackles. And more importantly, you've got to come over the top and swat that ball away, and he's a step behind and a step late.
Yeah, and
at least one.
Right,
you can't do that.
Right, and whether it was Lattimore,
Patrick Robinson was right there.
Right, Lattimore or Robinson doesn't matter. I mean, when you throw that ball as well as they did, and that's a tough catch over that shoulder. That ball gets right on top of him. The cornerback can't be held responsible. It's a perfectly thrown ball. And you're right. The only shot you got is a safety help on that play. And another thing about this, we talked about the narrative about, Kirk Cousins in a big game. It was a knock against him coming into this one.
Right.
And I really thought we could pressure him into making some mistakes. We never made him feel uncomfortable enough. And that was the difference between these two quarterbacks in their performances. One got very uncomfortable because of the protection in front of him. One didn't.
You look at the Green Bay Minnesota game 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
In Minnesota, at home, he looked frightened.
Right.
Because Minnesota beat him up. And Drew didn't look frightened because he's just about seen it all in his career, but he didn't have time to throw the football.
And look, Kirk Cousins threw a couple balls that got knocked around, thinked around a little bit. When we got pressure on him, there was one screen pass that got bounced around and tipped a couple times. Look, if we would have put some pressure, I'm sure we could have forced some turnovers there.
And tell me this: when is that defensive line in a big game like that going to generate? When is that going to generate a pass rush without a blitz?
Yeah, well, you're right. You're right. I mean, we've been talking about for 2 years. Who's going to give that pressure on the other side? And I saw in a lot of spots in this game they were doubling and Cam Jordan and saying somebody else come beat us, and we couldn't get to him.
No, we didn't. And we missed Marcus Davenport.
Yeah, but one more thing when you talk about the hypotheses about the explanation of this, we did have some key injuries. Of course, we lost Davenport, we lost Sheldon Rankins on the defensive line. The offensive line, we had some guys who weren't 100%. So maybe that was it as well.
It goes back to Teron Armstead with the flu playing his butt off 3 weeks ago or whatever, played his ass off against San Francisco and played well, gutted it out. And the guy playing next to him, and I hate to keep pointing the finger at one guy, but I'm very disappointed in a lack of tenacity that I see a lot of times from Andrews Pete.
Yeah.
And tell you something else too. This plays into it. You ask any offensive lineman, they'd much rather run block than pass block. They want to attack.
They want to go downhill.
They want to go downhill. And when you don't stick to the running game, that's partly on the sidelines.
That's right, yeah.
You have them on their heels in a pass protection mode the entire time.
Yeah.
Very frustrating for them. They don't get into a groove, and I think it does affect their confidence a little bit. And I think Andrews Pete didn't have a ton of confidence going in, and I think he's got even less now. That's not going to prevent him from asking for all the money in the world as he's a free agent, but that's business.
And you talked about the key spots where you go empty. I mean, that's not a good look when you're trying to keep the defense honest and keep the guys off of Drew. So anyway, we can second guess until the cows come home. We'll take a quick break again. We'll talk about the needs for New Orleans 2020, with outlook for the team just in general. We'll look at the NFL predictions from early in the season. We'll also look at the games coming up. We are
the Italian Sports Guys.
Bada boom.
Bada bing.